It's that the fly always has to track through before the tip. And it seems like that would be a common thing, just kind of a common sense thing to say, but it's really not. And people don't consistently do it, but it makes a world of difference when you're presenting the fly. When you're casting the fly, when you're presenting the fly, when you're swinging the fly, you always have to think about how everything's unfolding, how your line is tracking, and make sure that you're showing the fish the fly before you show them the sink tip.
That was James Johnson breaking out a great tip when swinging flies for salmon. Heading to Katmai today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. If you want to go a little deeper with the podcast and maybe take it to the river, go to wetflyswing.com/destination to get info on upcoming hosted trips through the podcast. In today's episode, I talk with James Johnson, the man behind Katmai Trophy Lodge and the Naknek River Camp. We talk about the best time to hit Alaska if you're a newbie, when to catch monster rainbows, and how to swing up salmon. Hear the story of how James's dad founded StealthCraft Drift Boats and why and how they are different, and how to properly set the hook for kings, and the best place to watch bears catch salmon. So, without further ado, here's James Johnson from Katmai Trophy Lodge. How's it going, James?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for helping to schedule this thing. It was a little rough on my end, kind of this time of year. I'm sure you're busy as well. I was hoping to jump into a little bit on Alaska. You have some, the Katmai Trophy Lodge. It sounds like you're all over the world with stuff you have going with your businesses. Before we jump into all that, can you just talk about how you first got into fly fishing and how it came to be where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I was kind of born into it, if you will. My parents had a big Orvis lodge in Michigan on the Naknek River when I was born. So, I spent my whole young childhood growing up in a fly shop and around guides and around fishing, and had my first fly rod at like 18 months old, sitting in the shop knocking stuff off the shelves and putting it in ceiling fans and stuff like that. I grew up right on the banks of the Naknek River. We had a house right there on the flies only water. And, when I was 4, I had my own rod and my own waders, and I'd go around and, while Dad was guiding or working in the shop, and I'd go walk around in the river and fish on my own and, actually catch fish. I caught my first ever steelhead by myself when I was 4, on a egg fly that I tied and a rod that I rigged by myself, beached it, unhooked it.
So you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's one of my first memories, actually.
That's awesome.
So I've been around it for forever, and then I guess it would have been when I was 11 or 12, we took a family trip up to Alaska. My parents and my younger brother and my younger sister, we drove up from Michigan in the motorhome with pulling a drift boat. And we went and we did the Kenai Peninsula, and Denali and whatnot. We were up here for like 6 weeks, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Caught lots of fish, hung out, and we got back that fall. Still to this day, I wonder what Dad was thinking. But he asked, little 11-year-old me what I was going to do when I grew up, and I said I'm going to own a lodge in Alaska. And then kind of that was that. We started looking at lodges together online that winter, and ended up buying our original lodge up here, Naknek River Camp, which we still own. We've been operating that one for 14 years now. And then 4 years ago, we expanded to add Katmai Trophy Lodge to the list, and I run that I run that one.
Oh, cool. That's okay. So yeah, that
my
was.
parents built Naknek Camp, and I run Katmai Trophy Lodge now.
Oh, okay. And what's the difference between the Naknek? Is that kind of more of a river camp? I guess one's a lodge and one's more of a river on the river sort of camping.
Yeah. No, it's still not camping. We have 10 guest cabins on the water, and then we have a main dining lodge back away from the water. And it's just slightly more rustic. One's at the outlet of the Naknek River, where it flows right out of Naknek Lake, so it gives us quick, easy access to some of the tributaries to Naknek Lake, and then also that very upper river fishing, and the ones at kind of the mid-river point, where we're starting to see a little bit of tidal influence, a little closer to the downriver salmon, kind of more centrally located on the river, and it's all, it's a little bit nicer accommodations. It's more your traditional like log lodge sort of feel.
Mm-hmm. Nice. What was the? Do you remember the name of that drift boat you guys pulled up there back when you were a kid?
Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of the first generation StealthCrafts.
Oh, so it was one of your boats.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was hoping to dig into that a little bit on the Stealth. Maybe we'll hold that for a little bit because I'm kind of a drift boat kind of a nerd too. I love love the drift boat, so I want to get into that. But I did want to touch on, so the Pier Marquette in that area. I know you haven't spent much time out there, as of late with everything you have going. But I mean, I know a few people that spent some time, and I've interviewed them some on this show. What was the lodge, the Orvis? Can you take us to that lodge? Because I hear a lot about Orvis fly shops, but is that just an endorsed lodge where people go up to Orvis, they sign up through there, and then they go out to your lodge to fish?
Yeah, so it was privately owned. Like it was ours. It wasn't an Orvis lodge, but it was just a kind of an Orvis endorsed outfitter. And at the time, we were the largest Orvis outfitter on the east side of the Mississippi. Had 18 full-time guides working out of there.
Oh, wow.
And at the time of sale, which was back in 2000, so quite a while ago now.
Oh, okay. And so your dad, did he have? I mean, what was his background? Was he always a guide lodge owner, or what? How did he get into all that?
No, not until he got up there and bought the cabins, which eventually turned into the lodge in Michigan. He grew up in Toledo, Ohio, there just on the border of Michigan, and his dad wasn't really in the picture at all, and he'd been gone and presumed dead since he was a kid, and he showed up later in life, but that's another story. And his mom was a school teacher, so she had the summers off, and she would let him and his younger brother Tom, who actually still guides for my dad up at Naknek River Camp, and worked with him in Michigan. She would let those two kind of plan their summer out. So they had a little camper van, and they'd drive around and go fishing and whatnot, and they were kind of always into it, just sort of on their own. Just kind of accidentally got into it, reading Field and Stream that was laying around. Their grandpa was a little bit of an outdoorsman, but not a fly fisherman. He'd fish bass in the local ponds and take them deer hunting and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of how they originally started to get into the outdoor activities.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And then so then he acquires, or eventually, what did your mom was a teacher? What did your dad do before he got into the lodge, purchased the lodge and stuff?
Really nothing. I mean, he was 24, so.
Oh, wow. I guess that was a long time ago, because that was a different time. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was young. I mean, so he started out of school. He managed restaurants for the Quaker Oats Corporation, and my mom, they met in college, got married at 19, so way too young. And then So they managed restaurants, and then Dad ran the food service at Cabernet Ski Resort one winter, and he also got his real estate license, so he did a little bit of real estate. But that whole time, he was looking at it as, he knew he wanted to be in the outdoor and lodge industry, and he was kind of doing that other stuff just to kind of try and figure out the program before he jumped in. They were poor. They didn't have any money. Mm-hmm. So he didn't really have a whole lot of opportunity to mess up.
Gotcha.
So
wow.
He trying to learn that hospitality and food service and, dealing with people sort of program where he got into it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a cool story. And then, what is the secret? You guys have been going, you said, for 14 years, did you say? You've had the lodge up there in Alaska?
Yeah, 14 years up in Alaska now. We've had the camp, and then we purchased Katmai Trophy Lodge 4 years ago, and it was a existing lodge at the time.
Yeah. Nice. What do you think has been what's the hardest thing about running a lodge, making it successful?
Oh, there's lots of hard things about running a lodge and making it successful. People think it's just a walk in a park, but Alaska's tough. It's a tough environment. We've got, all kinds of logistical issues all the time. Where we're at, it's not as bad as where a lot of lodges are, but everything's difficult up here. That the weather's tough on things. Getting supplies, getting what you need is expensive and time consuming. Living in, keeping a staff of people that are all knowledgeable and hardworking and that can spend 5 months together without trying to kill each other.
Right. Have you had some people? Have you had
trapped in a wilderness area with the same people where you can't get away for extended periods of time?
Gosh, I had a friend who was on. He was a commercial fisherman up there, and he told me the story one time. His one of his boat mates kind of lost it, because they were a few of them on this boat. Same thing for 3-4 months or whatever, and man, he just went nuts, grabbed a frying pan and basically tried to hit him over the head with a frying pan. And just, did you guys ever have? I guess that's the extreme version. Have you had to deal with some situations like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had several times where guides have threatened other guides with knives.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, it's been good. Of course, you get the occasional fight.
Yeah. Gosh. So, it is when you look back at, where you're at now, and it's been a little while, but you look at that 4-year-old kid or whatever you told your dad you wanted to lodge. Is it pretty much what you pictured now where you're at?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much there. I was 11 at the time. I wasn't quite 4 when I picked up, but I might as well have been.
Yeah, 11-4. That's pretty close.
No, I just like everybody else, I think about, what else I could be doing and what I should be doing, blah, blah, blah. And there's not many things like I would trade for. Still, it has its tough days and its tough months, but overall, I can't think of a job that I would rather be doing.
Yeah, and you're up there from pretty much
maybe Tom Brady. I'd probably trade for Tom Brady.
Oh, really? Is football? Is that your sport? Football?
Yeah, back when I was a kid, I used to like to play football. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, well, I'm a little ways out of the football days now, but.
What? So how old are you?
I'm 26.
Oh yeah, you're super young. So you're that's what I was trying to figure out the numbers there. So yeah, really, it wasn't even that long ago. Yeah. When you think about it, 14 years. That only brings you back. Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. Okay, cool. So yeah, Tom Brady. And if you would have gone pro in a sport, what sport did you have your best shot?
Oh man, I am smart enough to realize that I wasn't going to go pro in any sport, but
if there was one, what were you best at?
I was a pretty good baseball player.
Okay, baseball, cool. Right on. All right.
Yeah, baseball was my best. I much preferred playing football. and I was a pretty good football player, but I was a much better baseball player.
Gotcha. And you were a hitter, or what was your position?
Well, so I pitched, but definitely my strongest. I was a hitter.
Yeah. Nice.
That was definitely. I was really good. I could, really good being on. I never played at any sort of high level. I feel like I could have, but it's easy to feel like you could have.
I know. Yeah, I played.
But,
yeah, baseball was one of my sports too. I know it's a great sport. It's not easy though. I wasn't really a home run hitter. I always loved seeing people that could jack it out of the park, because I think I only hit 1 or 2 homers in my life. But no, well, we could kind of BS. This is all good stuff, but I did want to get into a little bit more on the kind of Alaska fishing. Maybe we can just dig in first and say, you start. When do you first get up to Alaska? You get up there in like June or the spring, or when do you first get up there?
Mid-late May.
Okay, mid-late May, and then you're there through the fall?
Yeah, so this year I arrived May 24th, and I'll be here until approximately November 5th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So pretty good long season.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you're there a good chunk. And if you had to pick, say yourself, if you had pick a species that you wanted to fish for and you could only pick one time a year, what time of, during that period would you go for?
Oh, I would personally definitely pick trout in the fall.
In the fall, and that's just because they're a little bit bigger and you can kind of fatter sort of thing, or why the fall?
You see fish in the fall that you don't ever see the rest of the year.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about, so I mean, the rain. Yeah. What's going on in the fall versus say the late June, early July?
Well, it's just when the big lake fish come out and they come down into the river. I mean, they're trying to pack on those last few pounds before winter. They're feeding on what few salmon eggs are left, and on the heaps of salmon flesh floating down the river.
Gotcha. Okay. And what?
And it helps that they've had all season to grow too. But you do get you get those freak trout coming and showing up then that you don't have the rest of the year.
What and a freak trout is like 15 pound, 20 pound trout?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about if you had a new person for their first trip up to Alaska? What would you recommend if they could pick any time of year? When do you think would be the best?
So for first timers, I usually suggest kind of midsummer, because you get in the midsummer time frame. That's when you get what most people's idea of classic Alaska is. That's when you have the bears running around. You have salmon. You have streams filled full of red salmon. You have the high numbers of fish being caught on beads and stuff, and lots of chrome salmon swimming around in the rivers, and so it gives you a good diversity.
Yep.
Yeah, it's when you have the most species of salmon all in the river. So if you've never caught any of them, it's fun to be able to knock a few off the hit list, if you will.
Yep. Gotcha. So like maybe if you had to pick a 10-day period, maybe a mid-August sort of thing, sometime in August.
Yeah, or even mid-July. But basically, if you've never been here before and you're just trying to experience whatever and you don't have anything in mind, mid-July to mid-August is a pretty hard time to beat.
Okay. All right, perfect. And you get some reds, you get silvers, and you miss the kings, right? If you're in there kind of mid-July to August.
Well, if you're getting the July time frame, you're still getting kings. August, king season closes with the month of July, so no kings in August, but August you'll get more chums and pinks starting to show up. You get into the silvers. So I mean, it's just a good time of year where you have a whole lot of things going on and lots of different styles of fishing and lots of stuff happening to where you can decide what you really what you really like and see as much of it at one time as you possibly could.
Mm-hmm. What and for so maybe July 20th through 30th, then you get a little somewhere in there. You might catch a few kings, and you'll still maybe get some coho. And then also in that July, early August, are you still getting rainbows pretty much throughout the whole summer?
Yeah, we get rainbows all summer. We don't. We kind of consider spring and fall to be our rainbow season, but it's really always pretty good. You have opportunities at 24 to 28 inch fish pretty much every day on the Naknek, no matter what time of year it is. And then, there's always rivers that we can boat to and fly to that are fishing really well for trout.
Oh, okay.
No matter what time of year it is.
And that's pretty much how you guys do it. People come into the lodge and they fly out to different destinations each day?
It depends. We have a couple different package options that people can choose from, but so our standard package, doesn't include any flyouts, but a lot of people will just add a day flyout into it. I would say that's probably most common, to where somebody will book the base package and then add a flyout when they get up here.
Okay.
And then we include a boat trip across Naknek Lake to the famous Brooks Falls and Brooks River. We'll go over there and hike around and fish. And
oh, nice.
It's just such an iconic site that I feel like everybody, at least if you haven't seen it before, you should go over and see it, just because it's, such a unique area.
Right. And what is the Brooks Falls? It's just amazing waterfalls and kind of just a cool area.
Yeah. So it's basically, if you've ever seen a picture of a bear catching a fish at a waterfall.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
That's where it is.
Oh, that's it. Awesome. Okay. Nice. Well, that gives me
we go there by boat, and it also has great rainbow trout fishing. So.
Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah, no, that gives me a little perspective on what you have going. Well, I guess, if you guys catch Chinook out there, you're swinging, or not swinging flies, but you're using flies. I mean, I know some of these lodges, they're only going with gear to get the Chinook, but are you getting them on flies?
Yeah, we fly fish them more than we do anything else.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can just break down a little bit, talk about, if we did say Chinook, if somebody was going out for some Chinook, how they might get into, the setup to use to catch Chinook. Is that something special, or are you using beads? Are you swinging? What type of gear are you using?
We're mostly swinging. Beads can be pretty effective for them as well at times, especially like large 10 to 14 millimeter beads. But mostly swinging flies, either single hand or spay, whatever their preference is, but we do a lot of spay fishing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Really, single hand, you want anything from a 8 to a 10. Ideally, you're looking at more like a 9 or a 10 weight rod.
Yeah.
With a fairly fast sink line. And then two-handed stuff, you really, minimum you're looking at like a 13-foot-8, all the way up to however heavy you want to go. But usually I would say, anything over a 9 is unnecessary.
Okay. And other than the gear, if you think of, the other salmon species, are you pretty much doing the same thing? Pretty much just casting out, swinging it down. You can swing up all those, whether it's a coho or sockeye or anything else?
Kings and chums are by far the most responsive to a swung fly.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the salmon, sockeye, you're drifting for them. And then, pinks, I guess pinks take a swung fly fine too. But silvers in particular do not take a swung fly very well.
They strip them?
Yeah, you got to strip them.
Yep. Which is cool.
And it partially is due to where they sit, and they're not in like very swingable water. They sit on shallow inside flats and kind of out of the current and whatnot in a lot of places. But even when they're in like pretty swingable areas, just a slow, steady swung fly does not work very well.
Yep. Gotcha. And for Chinook, it does. I mean, you're out there with a sinking line, get it down to them, get it in front of them. And is it pretty, like, how many on a good day out there are you getting into a few chances, or are you kind of nailing fish all day?
It just depends.
Yeah.
It's fishing.
Yeah.
Some days you knock them out, and some days you only hook a couple. But we do pretty well.
Yeah. How does that go? And I mean, we talked a little bit just starting out here, just on, you mentioned, I guess, off air there, just on the things are low, warm, maybe the conditions are a little different. I mean, when it's not quite right and somebody goes up there for a week and maybe fishing's tough, how is that? How do you, I mean, everybody knows it's fishing, but how does that go down on a trip like that?
I mean, even when it's tough up here, it's still usually pretty good.
Okay.
We're just spoiled.
Yeah.
But I mean, definitely you can have tough days, and and most people understand that fishing's fishing. If you fish a lot, you should understand that fishing's fishing no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that some people don't get a little bit upset if they don't. They think they come to Alaska and they're great anglers and they should catch all kinds of fish, even though that they really don't. They trout set every salmon that day, and then they're mad that they didn't hardly catch any salmon. But that's gonna, that'll happen. It's just something that you have to, know and prepare for as a guide or a business owner. But with a week, and with the fishery up here and all the diversity that we have, like, we're a lot more fortunate than most places to where, a lot of lodges and a lot of areas are kind of, a little bit of a one-trick pony. But we've got so many different rivers that we can fish, especially if you throw flyouts into the mix. But even without flyouts, that there's always going to be multiple things that are fishing really well at any given time, no matter what's happening. We've got stuff that's going really, really well. And the only time that we'll get into issues with tough fishing is, every once in a while you'll go to some other creek or whatnot, or you might go to a flyout and it's just not, and it's not going there yet, or it's not kicking off. The fish moved out, it got too warm, whatever. I mean, you can have a missed day every once in a while.
Sure.
Or if, you're really, stuck on, this is the fish that I want to catch.
Right.
If you're not willing, we've got 5 different species of salmon that we get in this river. We get Dolly Varden, Arctic char, rainbows, lake trout, grayling, pike. So there's going to be something that's fishing really well at any given time. Mm-hmm. It's just if you're willing to fish for them. So, like, for instance, let's say that it's the it's the last week of June or first week of July, and they're netting both the commercial guys are netting both tides at the mouth, and there's not hardly any sockeye running up because they're all getting killed at the mouth.
Oh wow!
And this guy really wants to fish for sockeye, and so he's going to stick it out and fish for sockeye all day, and he's going to catch 3 fish, and he's going to be mad about it when 100 yards downstream there's 25-inch rainbows crashing sockeye salmon small all day long. Yeah. And he's sit there and watch them and ignore them and stand here without any sockeye swimming by.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you can choose to have a tough day as opposed to switching tactics and having a great day.
So good advice for Alaska is to come up there and just be open to whatever the day or the trip gives you. Just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's good. No matter where you are, what you're doing, it's good to not, if something isn't happening, it's good to not beat your head against the wall and, be open to just having fun. Cause like, let's say that another prime example is you're here and whatever reason the silvers aren't around that day or something, there's chum salmon, and this will apply in, tons of places all over the state of Alaska. The silvers aren't in really good wherever you're at that day, but there's hundreds and hundreds of chum salmon in the same run. Chum salmon are the same size, if not bigger than silvers. They fight great. They bite flies really well. You can catch them on top water. You can catch them on a swung fly. They look really cool. And yet, people all the time consistently will say, oh, I don't want to catch chums. I want to catch silvers. Why?
No kidding. Really
no good reason. The only difference is that silvers jump a little bit more and chums, kind of pull. They're more like, it would be like brown trout versus rainbow on the fight. And then, although even really not quite that dramatic. And chums don't taste very good, and silvers taste great. And half the time, those guys aren't even keeping the fish anyway.
I was going to say, yeah, are people going up there packing their coolers like 50 pounds and heading home?
That's a bit of an Alaskan standard, really.
Pretty much. Is that what everybody comes up with?
Lots of guys do up here. I mean, we have a lot that don't as well, but it depends on the time of year. In peak silver season and peak sockeye season, we have a lot of people bringing fish home. Those are the only two fish that we let people keep.
Yep. And have you seen, I mean, I know runs, go up and down, but have you seen, is it a pretty steady, you've been there now for 14 years. Have you seen, over the time that the runs are pretty steady?
The run timings are very consistent. Like if we get a week of fluctuation, that's a ton. And then as far as numbers go, we definitely get some fluctuations, but we haven't really had any bad years.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good. Both with sockeye and king. We've had a couple tough king years in the last 14 years, but some people might argue, but I don't think that was numbers of kings. I think that our issues that we've had into with the tougher years are just like basically sunny days.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
If you have sunny days, salmon do not bite as well.
Okay.
If you have cloudy days, they bite a lot better. You can see plenty of them around, and then when spawning season comes around, they all pile up onto those flats. There's king spawning all over the place. So
yeah.
And then like right now, we're having the toughest silver year that we've had in 14 years. I would say by far. Now, we've still had some pretty good success on them, but we've also had some really tough silver days. People are talking about it, and it's fully, in my mind, contributed to that we've had 70 to 80 degree weather every single day this summer. We don't have any water. And, finally it's cooling back to an almost reasonable level. I mean, we're down to like 63 degree water temps now. But it was almost 70.
No kidding.
Earlier silver season. And the fish have been swimming by. Like you can see schools of silvers just piling by you. And they're just, I think that they're swimming up and they're holding in the colder temperatures in the lake.
Oh, right.
Deeper water.
There you go. Okay. And
stop staging where they normally would. So people are like, oh man, there's no silvers in the river. There's no silvers. What's wrong with our silver run? And I'm sitting here saying, yeah, I think they're running just fine.
Yeah. It's just,
we're just not catching them as we normally would. And they're not stopping where they normally would.
Gotcha. So it's just a little fluctuations with, just changes. Yeah. Temperature. I mean, obviously that's one of the biggest factors for any fish species,
water level.
Exactly. What's the, I guess going back to the lodge, if somebody comes up there, and they wanted to go to a lodge, what would be, I'm kind of setting up myself trying to set up potentially a hosted trip for, next summer. And I'm kind of asking some of the listeners of the podcast, what they're interested in. And some of the questions that are coming back are like, what do the lodges, what do they offer? Things like this, little things, flies, leaders, basics. Can you just walk us through that? If somebody was to come up there, what they need to bring, or is there a resource or guide on somewhere where they can kind of dig in to know exactly to get prepared for a trip?
Yeah, so most lodges will send some form of a packing list out, or they'll have some form of a packing list on their website. Like speaking for us, we provide all the gear and flies and leader and whatnot needed. The guides have all that stuff every day. Most people, we tell people that if they have rods and whatnot, they should bring them, and a lot of times they don't even necessarily use them, and sometimes they do. But any time that people don't have the right gear, we can supply it. Okay. And then, we even have like waders and wading jackets and stuff for people. But we typically tell everybody, again, that they should bring their own, waders and rain gear and whatnot. And we just kind of keep ours in pairs.
Okay. And
as far as fishing gear, flies, beads, rods, and it's all covered. We provide all that stuff.
Okay. So there's pretty much nothing, as far as coming up there. Yeah. People bring a normal fishing trip, but there's nothing special. It's kind of all covered. There's nothing they need to really think about bringing up.
No, we try and take care of that for them. I mean, people always, no matter what, people always show up with all the wrong stuff. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, you said 9-10 weight, but there's people show up with a 7 weight. Could you? I guess if you're fishing for some of the smaller fish, that would be great. If you're going for grayling and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we fish mostly like on the smaller streams that we fly and we boat to. We're fishing 5-6 weights and floating lines for rainbows. Some of the streams in the early season, you could throw 4 around for dry fly grayling.
Yep.
And then we do on the main river for trout, we fish 7 and 8 weights. For salmon, we fish 8-9 weights. Mm-hmm. And that, and that pretty much covers it.
Okay. All right, good. Well, we touched a little bit on just some of the fishing there. I did want to go back to the StealthCraft because I don't want to miss that because I'm kind of interested in, the drift boat. Can you take us back to, I guess you were a little bit too young, but maybe tell the story of how that came to be? Because, up here, I'm out in kind of the Pacific Northwest and we've got, Koffler and Willys. There's a whole bunch of drift boats down there, but the StealthCraft is one that, I've heard about, but you don't see as many of them just because they're not out here. How'd that all begin?
So, basically, Dad just got tired of not liking any of the drift boats that were around on the market, so he started making his own. He had the lodge out there in Michigan. He started doing it the later years in the lodge, but, he had sold clackas and hides.
Oh, okay.
Their
gotcha.
Gift over the years, but, just had, issues dealing with them to some extent. But the biggest thing that he didn't like about him is the rod storage and the actual gear storage issues. And then in addition to that, he's always been a big believer in, in stealth to an extent. And it's not really true with the company as much anymore as it was in the beginning. But he hated all the bright colors and whites and stuff, that they use on the side of those, basically the normal fiberglass drift boats. And he really hated the aluminum ones. And you start talking about like Koffler and Willie and stuff, because they're just, the Pure Marquette that we're fishing in Michigan primarily is a small stream and it's quiet, or, you have to be pretty quiet and you're bumping rocks. And so he wanted something to deaden the noise a little bit. And he wanted a boat with, in a little bit more natural colors or even camo colors. So a lot of those early StealthCrafts he did in camos. That was aqua design camo was the thing for a long time, and he even did like real tree camo and stuff just to break up the silhouettes. And then he built them with full rod trays and under rod tray storage and boxes to put all the gear in because, as a guide there, you hate not having places to put your stuff, Mm-hmm. Pretty much all the boats are open and you have to have, dry bags for your guest gear, and we're in the boats that he wanted. He wanted to be able to have walk-through areas and gear storage and all that. So started designing his own boats, started building them, and basically just got out of it when we started doing Alaska. It just kind of became too much for him, so he sold the company to Mike Vacke, who still runs it to this day. Oh,
okay. There you go. So it's still going. I didn't realize. Yeah, so he sold it, and they. So the unique thing. What's that?
It's growing. He's been doing he's been doing really well with it. I mean, the company's growing every year, it gets bigger and bigger, and has more models. And he's doing a raft program now. He's got jet boats and power drifters, and we actually run several of the power drifters up here on the Naknek.
Oh yeah. Yeah, which is a power drifter is just kind of a mix between a drift boat and like a sled with a motor on the back.
Yeah, so it's basically a drift boat with a motor.
Yep.
But run 25 miles an hour and roll like a drift boat.
Gotcha. Yeah, the design, I'm not sure if this was the original design, but I've seen some of the photos of the drift boats, and they have a kind of a unique, like a low, you've got the oars that are kind of set a little higher, but then the gunnels are kind of cut down and they swing down. And I mean, was that the original design and what's the deadening? Was there some sort of technology where, the foot on the bottom was deadened or something?
Yeah. So he builds them all with a honeycomb core. So it has a honeycomb core with glass on both sides, and that honeycomb just absorbs some of the noise. And it also allows them to have in theory anyway, a little bit stiffer boat with less glass. So they don't flex like most pure fiberglass drift boats would.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. They don't flex. So and is it aluminum? I mean, are the drift boats, are they aluminum?
No, they're fiberglass.
Oh, so they're fiberglass. Okay.
Honeycomb composite core, and then with fiberglass wrapped on both sides of it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So does it bend, like the clacket crafts, when you get them, the whole boat kind of bends. Do they bend like that?
Yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't bend like that.
Oh, I see. Cool. So, but it still probably slides really nicely over rocks and is quiet and has all that advantage too.
Yep.
As far as, getting back to the Chinook fishing, is there, again, if somebody was coming up there, is there anything, special if they're kind of wanting to target, go for Chinook especially, that we should, cover here? Or is it pretty simple? Just grab a couple sinking lines and a 9-weight rod and you're good to go? Yeah,
I mean, there's obviously lots of, little things that you can pick up, but most of those are pretty on water. I mean, it's just, the biggest thing is getting down. You just have to be able to get down to them.
Yeah.
How
do you get down? I mean, do you guys using a lot of weight on the flies?
Yes and no. Just it's situational. I usually run most of the weight in the tips, though.
Oh, you do? Okay. So in
that.
Gotcha.
In the sink tip, and then I adjust from. I'll have anything from floating flies to heavily weighted flies, and then and then I will kind of adjust that based upon the depth of the run and where we're fishing. But usually I fish lightly weighted or unweighted flies, and just rely on my sink tip to get my fly down for me.
Okay. And what sort of lines you guys are using out there?
Well, I mostly use a floating Skagit, and then anywhere from, depending upon the run that you're fishing, anywhere from T11 to T20.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then single hand, I usually run. Again, it's going to vary a lot, but like if I had to pick one, I'd probably say a 350 or 400 grain sink tip.
Yep. Okay, so you're using like a T11 or like a 10-foot section or something like that, or 7 or 10 foot, or are you using longer sections?
Yeah, like 10 feet.
Yeah, normal. Okay, so yeah, it's pretty normal game. And the rivers, are they fairly stable? I mean, it's summertime, so is all that fairly stable in a typical year?
Yeah, our water levels are pretty stable. Like we don't get big blowouts or anything like that where we're at.
Okay. All right.
The Naknek flows out of a 45-mile long lake, and it takes a lot of time for that lake to go up and down. So really, we're pretty much we really can't get blown out.
Yeah.
Like we don't get unfishable conditions, and the river doesn't raise dramatically overnight, and some of the creeks that we fish do, but but they're all unnecessary. I mean, if it rains and the creek blows out, you just don't go fish it. So.
Yep. Gotcha. What are your, do you have a couple of like top, if, Chinook flies that you have to choose 2 flies that you go with?
I mean, yeah, it's hard to beat, just a plain old intruder.
Mm-hmm.
We fish a lot of, and we pretty much all tie ourselves. Like we all tie, but we mostly just fish intruder variations.
Just
I
black
tie them
and
with box a lot.
What colors?
Chartreuse and blue, pink,
mm-hmm.
orange, fairly hot colors.
Yep. Is there a fly? Is there a name? Is there a name? Yeah.
Pink, definitely one of my favorites. But,
yeah. Pink.
But chartreuse and blue are both obviously great colors as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to tie a lot of Alaska flies for people going up there back in the day. This is, quite a while ago. It was kind of before the intruder revolution sort of thing. But yeah, we used to tie a lot of, I think one of the favorite was like a big, long pink wing, with a silver body, kind of a flashy mylar, kind of a tinsel body. Do you guys use a lot of flash and stuff like that in them?
A little bit of flash. I don't use a lot of flash. Mm-hmm. But it depends, it depends on the day. It depends on the pattern. I usually am on the light flash side.
Okay. Is there do you have a name of a fly that you might be able to Google up, or are they all just kind of your own stuff?
Honestly, I'm pretty bad about that because I pretty much just always use my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. All right. And do you are you you're running the lodge, but have you done some guiding? Do you do guiding? Is that something you enjoy?
I've guided a lot over the years. I guided in Michigan for 8 years, and I've been guiding up here since I was a baby. But I still do guide a fair bit. I don't guide as much as I used to. I've been guiding probably less every year since I started doing the lodge here, but I still guide maybe, I still guide 80 days up here.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, you're still doing it.
So quite a bit. Uh-huh. Yeah, I've guided every day this week. I'm only off today to talk to you. I'll go back to guiding again tomorrow.
No kidding. That's cool. What was the what'd you guide with Michigan? Was that like steelhead salmon, or what were you doing there?
Yeah, so I did steelhead salmon, trout, and then I did that for several years, and then I stopped doing the salmon program, and the trout. I stopped doing trout first, so that I could consider May to be my tarpon season, because you got to have tarpon season in there.
Yep.
And then I started, and then I stopped going back to Michigan for salmon season to stay up and do the, a little bit more of the fall trout fishing. Mm. And then 2 springs ago was my retirement run for steelhead. Oh,
okay. Gotcha. So you did the winter, kind of cold winter steelhead, right?
Yeah, I used to do, I would do basically end of October, November, and then into March and first half of April for steelhead.
Okay. Yeah,
that was what I was doing the last several years.
Yeah. How was so you did some Chinook fishing in Michigan. Is there a big difference between that and Chinook fishing in Alaska?
Oh, there's a big difference. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest?
Yeah, they're a different fish for sure. The kings here are just so much meaner. They're
aggressive,
much meaner. They are far more aggressive. The kings here, they're nasty.
Yeah, are they?
They just kill.
Lots of jumping and kind of tearing you up.
Yep, they fight hard. The kings in Michigan fight hard and run around and jump too. It's not as much of a difference there. They're more aggressive. The kings up here are just more aggressive. Mm-hmm. Fight more, fight harder.
Yeah.
It's a different animal, for sure.
Right. Were you swinging for steelhead in Michigan, guiding there?
Some swigging, mostly nymphing, though, like mostly beads.
Yeah. That's right. And that's the same bead thing you guys do up there for salmon, kind of typical thing, just bead with some weight, get down to them. And
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's some swinging, but for the most part, you don't catch very many fish swinging in Michigan.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, even people that think that they want to swing would really rather catch fish.
Exactly.
But,
Most people, the really, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the really crazy ones. There are some really crazy ones. I mean, the people that are only want to take them on a dry fly on the surface, steelhead fishermen, which is
right.
Pretty intense.
That's true. That's true. I didn't get many of those, but I had a handful of guys that we do swing trips every year in Michigan, and then I would swing myself in Michigan when I would go out fishing. But man, it's so much better up here.
Yeah, that's why you're up there for 6 months.
Yeah, the fish up here actually like to take a swung fly. The fish there do not.
No.
Same with kings. The kings in Michigan do not want to bite a swung fly. The steelhead in Michigan do not want to bite a swung fly. And the ones up here, they just want to kill it.
Yep. That's awesome. Cool. What's
cool.
If you had somebody, up there, again, take that person up on their first trip into the lodge, they're out there going for Chinook. Would you have a couple of tips you might give them to help them get into a fish?
Yeah, I mean, so it's basically the biggest thing. If you can have one simple tip to get people swinging properly, it's that the fly always has to track through before the tip. And it seems like that would be a common thing, just kind of a common sense thing to say, but it's really not. And people don't consistently do it, but it makes a world of difference when you're presenting the fly. When you're casting the fly, when you're presenting the fly, when you're swinging the fly, you always have to think about how everything's unfolding, how your line is tracking, and make sure that you're showing the fish the fly before you show them the sink tip. Because if that's not the case, that tip runs through. You get a little bit of bow, the tip runs through, it pushes the fish out of the way, they never even see your fly.
Oh, wow. Yep.
So, throw downstream, throw big mends into it, do whatever it takes to keep that fly tracking just behind your sink tip and in front of your sink tip.
Mm-hmm. Are you casting? How far are you casting?
You only need to really cast your skagit head in a lot of cases.
Oh, okay.
It helps if you've got a little bit of game, but if you can throw your skagit head, I'm usually pretty happy.
Okay, so you're not hitting fish on the other side of the river sort of thing.
No, you don't need to. And we do a lot of boat swinging too.
Oh,
which makes
okay.
it a lot easier. Just park closer to them. If you can't cast very far, I'll just park you closer to the fish.
Okay. And then when they hook up, so you said don't do a trout set. What's the set you need to do with Chinook?
Well, so basically the other big thing that people do wrong all the time, anytime they're swinging flies, but with kings and rainbows alike, is you have to wait for it. You have to wait like an uncomfortably long time. And even adult kings, they'll pluck the fly a lot. You'll get a lot of little grab, bump, bump, bump. And you got to just let it swing through. I a lot of times like to feed a little bit of line to them, like if I get a bump, I'll kind of extend my arm or lean into it or take a step or do something to try and drop that fly into them and trigger a bite.
Yep.
And then when you set the hook, it's really not even as much of a set. The fish grabs. You have to wait until the fish turns, and then you should lift up into the downstream side. And if you can actually manage to do that, then you up your hookup percentage dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. So basically just patience.
They should be pulling line off the reel.
Damn. And are you seeing it a lot of times? You seeing the fly kind of in the fish and kind of the eat?
No.
No. Okay. You're just feeling it. It's all feel.
Yep, it's all feel.
So you're using like a 3-foot leader, length of leader or something like that?
I usually would fish more like a 5-foot leader.
Just a 5-foot with 15-pound or something like that for Chinook?
Yep.
Just a straight 15
I don't like
pound.
I don't like to go heavier than 15 pound if possible, because you start to break too many things that you don't want to break.
That's right.
Like, tips and loops and running line and.
That's right. Huh. Wow.
15 pound. If you can't land them on 15 pound, you're just probably not going to land them anyway. So
That's right. What is the biggest? I mean, are you guys seeing some 50-pound monsters up there? Or what's the average size Chinook?
Not really. We get 40 pounds 30 pounds is a big fish for us. 40 pounds is a real big fish.
Yeah.
We do get several of those a year. 40-something pound fish. And I don't know what the biggest one we got this year was. The biggest one, we don't ever weigh them, because at least for the most part we don't remove them from the water. But we measure them, and I think that the biggest one that we measured this year was 46 inches. I netted several that were just over 44 inches. And I think our biggest one, we got 2 last year that were 48 inches.
Jeez. That's cool. What are there any?
Big.
Yeah, that's humongous. That's crazy. And it's basically, a steelhead is a good fighter, a good jumper, but you're saying these Chinook are every bit as vicious as a nice bright steelhead?
On the take, I mean, the kings don't quite fight like a steelhead. Steelhead are faster and they jump higher. The kings they're more powerful. The fight's very different on a king than it is on a steelhead.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And what about, again, getting back to that person, they're heading up there. Is there a resource or some resources maybe online or books or anything? If we're focusing on Chinook, Alaska for, Chinook, that you would recommend they kind of check out, or is there anything come to mind on that? Any videos or anything that could maybe help them before they get up there?
Honestly, not really that I can think of, but I don't keep track of all the Alaska books and whatnot.
Yep. You're just you're living it.
I'm just kind of there.
Yeah. Are you going to be there till you're kind of old? Is that the plan? Are you sticking? Or do you have other plans that maybe move down to the Bahamas or somewhere where it's warmer?
Oh, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't make plans that far in the future, but no, I'm sure I'll get bored and do something else at some point.
Yeah. I'd stick with, is the fly fishing, industry, is that you sticking in there?
Oh yeah, I'm going to stay in the industry, but I've pretty much looked at every potential location for a lodge in the world at this point, I think. So. Yeah.
And what are other than Alaska, what are the big ones?
Oh, there's lots of big ones, but I've looked at South America. I looked at like Patagonia and whatnot. I've looked at lots of the remote islands out in the Pacific, and of course the Bahamas and Belize and Mexico and all those sorts of places. But
yeah,
I've got a couple ideas, and that's kind of my future view. Is I just kind of see growth. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to, kind of add lodges. As if possible.
Yeah. And
I have the client for it.
Yeah. Do you go, I thought I might have heard or read that you were down in Belize or somewhere already in South America. Do you spend some time there each year, during the winter?
Yeah, I've spent 5 months the last 2 years down in Belize, and then 2 to 4 months the prior 6 years. Okay.
Yeah. And is Belize, how is that? I mean, that's pretty, is there potential there to maybe, start something up there? Or is that pretty, I mean, are any of these places kind of crowded?
Oh, that's what we've been doing. that's what we've been doing. We have owned and operated flip bones.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. So you're down there.
Yep.
Right on. All right. Well, any, I guess we've kind of dug into a little bit on the Chinook. Is there anything, you want to touch on as far as, again, if somebody, you think of that person that's maybe heading up to your lodge for the first time, and you said would you recommend more of the Naknek, kind of river lodge, or does it matter between the two that you guys have up there?
For Chinook?
Yeah.
So the lodge, Katmai Trophy Lodge, is much closer to the King water.
Okay.
So we run most of the King trips through the lodge versus the camp. And then, like, even if guys want to, we run the lodges we run them as sister lodges. So a lot of if we have guests up at the camp that want to do king fishing, a lot of times we'll have them go out with our guides.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And there's
not always.
Not always, yeah. Are there a number of different, how many lodges are up there besides you guys in that area?
There's quite a few. It's a popular area.
Mm-hmm.
And then the locations vary depending upon, how many people would be. Some of the rivers are fairly busy by Alaska standards anyway, and some of them you don't ever see anybody on, and you get everything in between. So. Yep.
Okay. All right.
But there's plenty of lodges around, King Salmon, Bristol Bay.
Yeah.
That are flying around and on the lower river. So we have the two farthest lodges up on the Naknek, and then there's lodges, like I've got another lodge within sight of my lodge,
mm-hmm.
right across the bay, and then there's a couple more down around the corner.
Yep. Right on. And, before I let you go, I had just a quick little rapid fire round if you had a couple more minutes.
Yep. No problem.
All right. So I guess we'll start off with just, thinking of, again, you've got a couple lodges, you got some good stuff going and you got plans to maybe expand out. Is there any, when you think of, words of advice, I don't know if your dad or anybody along the way has given you any that you remember, anything you can, kind of share that's helped you kind of guide, to get where you are?
Yeah. I'd just say it's fly fishing's a small world, and it's better to have friends than enemies.
Mm-hmm.
If possible. Everybody knows everybody, and
yep.
And it's good to have friends.
Yeah, that's true. Do you see that people? You hear that, we've talked about that occasionally now on this podcast, that there's some strong personalities out there. But have you seen that with people in the industry where they've made not made enough friends and they've kind of been exiled, so to speak? Or is that? It just seems kind of weird because it seems like most of the people that I talk to are really, really great people.
Yeah, sure, most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people that are not. There's a lot of guys that are too big for their shorts.
Yeah.
And run into issues there.
What's the? Sure. How do you keep from keeping grounded and keeping? Obviously you're running a lodge, some of the biggest lodges. How do you make sure you're not too big for your shorts?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm not.
Are you? Yeah, that's right. I've seen some of those. You've done some.
Trying to. You just have to all keep it in perspective, and think about what you're doing and what you should be doing, and I try to help people out when possible. And
yeah, are you pretty similar? Are you pretty similar to your dad? You and your dad, your personalities?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Pretty similar.
Okay. And what about any other, along the way, have you had any other mentors, people that have really helped you in fly fishing or, just along your journey?
Yeah, no, I've been privileged enough to fish with and be around a lot of great anglers, and that always helps for sure. Helps you be who you want to be. And I've never really had too much in the way of casting lessons or instructional or any sort of real teaching like that, but just being around people that are really good, and and trying to pick up and learn from everybody as much as possible. I think that that's a key thing, is to really be a great angler or guide, or really great at anything in general. You have to be willing and open to learn from other people that know more, because almost no matter what, everybody knows something that you don't know. Whether you're a better fly fisherman than them or not, whether you're a better spay caster than they are, this guy has something, this guy over here has something that you could learn from, and something that he's done that can make you better. And being able to recognize what those are, and also what isn't, being able to also, in the same token, being able to recognize that that is not better. But, if somebody's out fishing you, that's one thing that I think that we've been really good at over the years, and has helped us a lot, to where we have a lot of great anglers, and we're all friends, and we talk every single day, and everybody's willing to help everybody out, and that's, key. So if I go out and I have a tough day, let's say in the early years, I'd go out and maybe have a tough day, and I'd come back and John Kestner crushed him. And, so I'd sit down and talk to John and see what he did differently than what I did. And he would say, oh, well, you were fishing too heavy a tippet, or, oh, you were stripping and they really wanted to swing today because of blah, 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 or whatever. But, and being able to receive and recognize, and then knowing when to, throw that into your repertoire is the difference between an average guide and a great guide, I think.
Do you guys have, how do you find your guide? I mean, do you have a lot of turnover new guides every year, or how does all that work?
We pretty much don't hire any guides that we either don't know or aren't a reference from someone that we know well. And then, no, we don't really have much turnover at all. So at the lodge, I have all of my guides from last year are here. And so, let's, start from the top. I've got Miles Cluzane, whose dad guides for my dad at the camp, and he's a longtime guide in Michigan, guide back in the lodge days. So it's his oldest son, and he's been working for us for 12 years now. And then my head guide, Cody, has been working for us for 9 years.
Wow.
And Jake and Jeremy have been working for us for 7 years. And then John, who you talked to, has been working for us for 5 years. And Chris has been working for us for 5 years. And then that was all of my guides from last year. And then this year I picked up a bonus guide that we weren't planning on having, who was a friend of ours who was guiding up on another river, and she came down to do the last half of the season with us. So my only new guide is a bonus guide that I wasn't planning on having, and all of my other guides are return.
There you go. That's really, I mean, that sounds like a pretty solid crew for sure. Do you guys see many, women coming up there, or what percentages on women coming up to fish?
It's a lot more than it used to be, but it's still not very significant.
Yeah. Like 10%, 20%.
Definitely not 20%.
Yeah.
Maybe 5%. Maybe 5%.
Yeah.
But that's more than the 2% it used to be.
Right. Yeah. It's slowly growing. Yeah. There's some movements coming on. Definitely there's more women getting involved, but yeah, I think Alaska is kind of an extreme, probably. Well, they're probably, the temperature wise, It's amazing, right? It's a little extreme, right? It's kind of the bears and all of that.
Yeah, not very many, and most of the women that we do get are coming up with their husbands and stuff.
Yeah. Do you guys offer that where people
we have
come
one
up?
lady declaring?
Do you guys offer that where people come up and, maybe a guy is going up there to fish the lodge and maybe the ladies are, hanging around doing stuff around? I mean, there's things to do around there. Do people come up there to other than fish?
We do some. So the lodge, before we bought it, 50% of their clientele was just bear viewing.
Oh, wow.
Non-anglers. We didn't carry that on because I don't see that to be a very viable program, just based off of, like, those are one-time trips, and we run off of a very high repeat client program. So I think that it's much more worthwhile to get somebody who's going to come back every year than to try and get someone who you're going to have to replace every year.
Yep.
But there's definitely a market for that, and we definitely get some non-anglers coming up and fishing with the family and whatnot. But for the most part, they all still fish to some extent. And there's not a lot of other stuff to do other than, go to the falls.
Yep.
The falls and look at the bears and things like that, wildlife viewing.
That's kind of it. Okay. What's your, when you get off the river, what's your drink of choice in the evening?
Honestly, I'm not a big drinker.
Yeah.
But, no, not too much, especially up here. I'm too busy up here to be much of a drinker. But, I don't know. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd be a rum guy.
Okay. Rum. Nice. All right. And what about...
Yeah, just from being in the island so much down there,
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. Rum is is it just straight rum, or is that mixed with something?
I used to always drink rum and Coke, but now if I drink it, I just drink rum on the rocks.
Yep. That's the best.
Yeah.
All right. And what about music? Do you have a favorite band or type of music you kind of enjoy?
Man, I listen to a lot of different stuff, but I don't know. These days, I guess I mostly just listen to what the kids are listening to these days. A lot of Drake.
Oh, really? I was gonna say, because you are the kid. I mean, you are the kid to a lot of people. You're still the kid.
Yeah.
The Drake is Drake still out there?
Yeah.
They're still going. That's right. Rap is still. They thought it wasn't going to make it, but it's still going strong, isn't it?
It's still going strong. Yep.
Yeah. Whatever. 40, 50 years later.
But I listen to a lot of stuff. Recently I've been listening to a lot of metal, going back to my my high school days.
Oh, so what that? So you were, What was the metal? What was the big group then?
Like Korn and System of a Down, and a lot of Growth and.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, I had to pick your brain a little bit there. So, is Instagram, is that the place where you kind of the social kind of network you're most on? People want to find you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And anything in the next 6 to 12 months you want to give a heads up that you have going new for yourself, or anything upcoming for you or the lodge or anything?
Oh man, I don't know. It's hard to say at this point. 6, 12 months out, nothing terribly big. I don't think I'm looking at several options for potentially adding another lodge to the program. Mm-hmm. But I'm also starting to do more hosted stuff. I'm going to do some more travel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have some ideas coming out on that soon. Like I'm talking with some friends of mine that have own the nomadic waters in Brazil, and I'm thinking I'm going to do a trip out there for fall 2020.
Okay.
And get some peacock bass. I'm planning on doing like Ascension Bay this year for permit, and maybe some other stuff like that.
Perfect. All right. Well, I guess, and if people want to find you, they can just go to, I guess, katmaitrophlodge.com, or on Instagram. What was your handle again there?
Yeah, so Katmai Trophy Lodge is the handle on Instagram for the lodge, and then James Johnson with the S spelled with a Z.
That's right.
Just to be goofy, I guess.
Yeah, on Instagram. Okay.
Apparently, James Johnson is a pretty popular name.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, James Johnson is. Okay, so James Johnson with the Z, we'll check it out, and I'll put links to everything, we talked about there, and people can connect with you. But yeah, James, just wanted to thank you for coming on and shedding some light on kind of the Alaska experience. I'm hopefully going to maybe get up there here the next year or so, and maybe I'll pick your brain a little more as I get closer to it. But yeah, I appreciate you giving us some information and digging in a little bit here.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. It was great talking to you.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/Johnson. I've added some local trips that include Steelhead and Stillwater and some other stuff. If you go to wetflyswing.com/destination, or it might even be easier just to go to click the link at the top of our the main page there, and you'll see a link to the travel link. Check that out. There's a new website that I'm building on there. You can check out some of the places we're heading. So would hope to and look forward to maybe seeing you on the river here and getting on a trip. One last thing before we go, the music. If you get a chance, send me a social message of your favorite music right now. Band, music, type of music, whatever you got. So I know you're still listening, even at the very end here. That'd be cool. Thanks again for stopping by. Check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon. Hope to maybe see you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.